Hey woodworkers, so welcome back. Talking about some tricks for saving a little bit of time when it's coming to cutting half-blind dovetails. So what I've done with this board here is I've laid out half-blind. You see I have the web, I've got my shoulder, I've got the area of my tails already laid out, which is great. At this point, I've gone in as I would if I were to cut these out by hand, and I've gone in with my saw, going into my lines where I need them. I've transferred the tail boards onto this thing, so all the stuff that you would traditionally do with half blinds. So the savings is going to be in how we remove this material here between the pins. And traditionally what we would do is set this into some type of a bench hook or onto the bench, and then start chopping these things out. And it doesn't take a ton of time. For one corner, I could knock through this 2-3 minutes. It's not long. The savings comes if you've got a larger board, if you've got multiple parts, maybe you're cutting for a lot of different drawers. This is a major factor as far as time saving. So what I have set up is two things. Number one, I've set up, let me see, make sure I'm on camera. Alright. So I've got a trim router, and the trim router is set up with just a straight bit, small diameter straight bit. And what I've seen a lot of woodworkers do is take this bit, set it to the depth of the shoulder, and then they go in and start removing this material here, and that's an okay way to do it. Sometimes if this is a really thin board, then this becomes really tippy, and what somebody can do is clamp on an additional surface here, and then that way there's more bearing surface so this doesn't tip as much, and you can make this part much thicker if you need to. The problem I don't like with this is twofold. Number one is I'm cutting directly into the end grain, and that's a little bit fussy to do because there's a little bit more motion or movement when this bit grabs into what it is you're cutting. So I don't love doing this for that reason. And the other thing is I've kind of blocked off my sight lines as far as what I see that I'm routing into, and it becomes slightly problematic. The only real guide that I've set up here is going to be the depth of this bit to align with the shoulder, and that's good. What would be better is if I had something else to stop the outside of the router here so that I would be able to cut in or route into this web line at the same time. So because of that, I've done something a little bit different. I've made this jig here, and forgive me again. So I've made this jig, which has been a real lifesaver for time saving. So with this jig, I've got these adjustable handles, I've got this block here, and then this block is not terribly new. I've seen woodworkers talk about how just having this simple board here will assist them when it comes time to chopping out the shoulders of their mortise. And so coming in here, having this nice large reference to get into this area, and you get a clean shoulder all the way across. And I could see the benefits of that. But it's still kind of a lot of work to remove most of this material to get to that shoulder. So what I would do is I would set this out to a fixed length, and then I would have this router set up in such a way so that the depth of the bit is set to align with my web down here. The edge of this router will then align with the shoulder, and from there I can go and do all of my cutting and then start to chase this thing through pretty quickly. So that's what I'm going to be setting up for. A couple things about this jig that I've done is I've designed this like a bench hook. I've got this hook here, so this will stay in place against the bench, and I can leave it in this position. I can also clamp it into a vise, which I find a bit more helpful. So once I'm in the vise, then I start to have a little bit more control as far as this fixture not moving, and that's a big benefit for when I'm rounding these things out. I don't want a lot of surprises. The one thing that I'm fundamentally not crazy about with this type of setup is going to be the alignment of this board here. And if I just had this block into this type of fixture, then I guess I could use a knife and align the shoulder there and align the shoulder there and then lock this in. But again, that brings us right back to chopping onto the shoulder line. And so what I prefer to do is pull this thing out to the location that I need it, and then being able to bring that trim router into place. The alignment here becomes super critical, and in the interest of making this much faster, I've created a little sliding dovetail fence so that when this board goes into place, it doesn't matter the alignment of this block to the rest of the fixture, but it does keep, once this board is pushed against this little fence here, then I can lock this in, and then it keeps it squarely referenced to this block, and so I don't have to worry about the movement of this thing. And so I think by having this in a place, it just helps to expedite this process quite a bit. Alright, so now the tricky part. So I've already set the depth of the bit here, again, to align with my web. What I now need to know is what the projection of my board is, my pin board, from this block. And obviously I've got a rectangular base on this router. Most routers, or many routers, have round bases, and in a lot of ways that might be easier, assuming the bit is dead center into that round base. If it's a little bit off, it kind of kills the alignment of these the shoulder line. So what I need to do is find a reference, and for the sake of what I'm doing here, I'll probably set it up this way, so I'm only going to use this edge here up against this little block. Not this one, because that's going to be a further depth out. Over here, if that bit is not totally centered inside of the router, once this plate is engaged, then it kind of kills the whole thing. So as long as I have this always referencing against that block, that's kind of what it is I want to do. Alright, so I need to create the exact same distance from here to the edge of my cutter. So this edge right there to that's the distance that I'm trying to set up from here to there. So once this thing goes down, that's what I'm looking for. Now the tricky part is repeatability, and how am I going to get this board to go back to the exact same projection every single time. So I'll be done with this one, pull the next one in, and being able to repeat it quickly. And the references that I have, there's nothing back here that's going to be helpful, because maybe I have different lengths of these boards. It really is the end of this to that block. So what I'm looking for, and I'll just do it this way. Alright, so I'm too far out. It's pretty close. Alright. There's no real easy way to measure this distance there to there, and that only tells me a part of the information that I need. So going off of that edge of the cutter as well as the base of the router, that's what the square is now set up for. What I haven't accounted for, because that distance there is good, what I haven't accounted for is the extra thickness here that the corresponding tail board is going to need to take up. So from this shoulder line out to the end of this board. That's what I need to line 2 or 4. So there's a little bit of guess and check here. What I want to do is set the length of this blade here, make sure that it's consistent over there, which it is. Again, that little dovetail fence that I created. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to try to do a cut to see how close I am. Always sneaking up on this line I think is preferable. So I'm going to intentionally undercut, so I'm not going to be quite into my shoulder line yet. Alright, let me see what this looks like. Well, I always hate saying this. Sometimes it's lucky, or it's better to be lucky than good. And so it looks like in that setup, I got right to my shoulder line here, pretty close to my web line, although I think I'm just a little bit deeper than I want to be. Oops, sorry, can't see that. I'm just a little bit deeper here. And so that's why I always recommend having a test piece. So anyway, that's the process. You can see how much time, how much time it would take to clear out this material and so on and so forth. But I think there's a real easy way to start cutting out the waste pieces on your half-blind dovetails. One more time, I did have to saw up to where those pin lines need to be. Without doing that, you're going to have to go in and chisel out all of this material here. But by doing the saw cuts here first, there and there, and then going in with your router, you should be able to be getting through these things rapidly. So, alright, cool. I don't want to waste more of your time by doing all of these things, but I'll readjust the depth of that cut, do these other ones, and see how my fit is. Alright, that's the process. Thanks.